Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my channel's weekly compendium for the week ending Monday, June 20th, 2022. Case file number 658, written by Dozer2K16. When my girlfriend laughs, but my girlfriend never laughed. Tonight, I spent the night at my girlfriend's house, as I often do. There was a brief 10 or so minute period where we went to her sister's room and just talked with her. We had returned to my girlfriend's room after this short amount of time, to where she could not find her phone. So as most people would do, I FaceTimed it, so she could find it in the midst of all the blankets. Within a few seconds, the phone was found and she jokingly answered and said, "Hello." I made a funny looking face with my tongue sticking out, and she jokingly made a "what the hell" kind of face and then hung up. However, that's the weird part. When the call was hung up, from my phone speakers there was a giggle, her giggle, which is a very distinct sound that we both know well. In person, as we sat on our bed, there was no giggle, just the face she was giving back to me. At first, I thought nothing of it, like, oh, maybe I'm just hearing things. Then, she goes on to talk about the face I was making, but then adds, "I don't think I laughed though." Then I knew it really happened. We both think it is extremely creepy and strange. Case file number 659, written by The World to Come. Water to wine, but water to mud? Even more impressive. I always just buy those bulk plastic water bottles at the store. I pull one out of my refrigerator and drink from it, and once I'm done, I crumple it up, throw it in the recycling bin, and grab another one from my refrigerator. I never ever reuse one of those water bottles, just throw it in the recycling bin. As usual, I'm at home. I live alone, no pets or roommates or anything. I had taken a new water bottle out of my refrigerator and opened it, and drank about half of it. I went to the bathroom, which is in the other room, for about 2 minutes and came back out. Habitually, I grabbed my water bottle and took a big sip, and, horrifically, ran to the sink and spit everything out. It was a type of reaction you have if you ever bitten into food and gotten a completely different taste than you expected. I dropped the water bottle as well in the process because I was so shocked at what just happened. The water I had just drank had a very grassy, earthy, muddy taste to it. The remainder of the water in my water bottle was murky brown, and the water bottle and water smelled grassy. I was in shock for a bit on what had just happened. I was just drinking out of this water bottle 2 minutes earlier before I went to the bathroom. I checked the lot number on the water bottle in case it was an old water bottle that had gotten misplaced in the back of my refrigerator and just been sitting there for years with the water going bad, but the lot number was the same as all the most recent water bottles I had just bought. Again, I live alone. All my doors were locked. I checked if anyone was in the apartment, but no one was. Like I said, I don't ever reuse or refill my water bottles when they're empty. I have no explanation. I did keep the water bottle as physical evidence and had my mom and sister smell it and tell me what it smelled like. They both agreed it was like muddy water. Case notes, file number 659. Here I am thinking of the classic biblical parable of Jesus turning water into wine. But why would anyone ever turn water into muddy water, even if they could? And who was it that did this? Was it some force of nature that converted your perfectly clear water into muddy water? And how would it go about doing this? Did someone sneak into your apartment and bring in mud and dump it into the water bottle and then just leave? Maybe one of your friends was pranking you? That's the only thing I can think of that makes any sense. If anyone has your apartment key, then that would be the most likely event. But still, even that is very strange. I know if I did something like that, I'm a prankster, I would definitely take credit for it, at least after a day or two. Creepy file number 26, written by Liquid Pen Chamber 1019. I'm always watching. This happened to me when I was about 10 years old. But even now as an adult in my 30s, I remember it like it was yesterday. My parents had taken my sister and I out to a movie, and then to get ice cream in celebration of my older sister getting straight A's on her report card. I remember my dad had gotten off work later than usual, so by the time the movie was over and we had our ice cream, it was well past our bedtime. It didn't matter though. My parents were happy and proud of my sister. We had a great time, and we took our time getting home. If it wasn't for what happened when we got there, I would have always looked back fondly on this night. We got home at around 10:30. Bedtime was usually 10, so I went straight to my room to put my pajamas on while my sister went to brush her teeth. I remember thinking that it seemed a little more chilly in the house that night, but that's the only thing out of the ordinary I can recall from when we first walked in. I barely had a chance to change when I heard my dad yell out our names from what I thought was the kitchen. I didn't know what was wrong, but I knew it was bad because I heard fear in his voice for the first time ever. It scared me really bad. I bolted out of the door and into the kitchen as fast as I could. My sister was already there, and her and my parents were standing very close. My mom looked like she was on the verge of panic when she motioned for me to come close. She wrapped her arms around my sister, and me and my dad were already dialing on the house phone. Then I noticed some glass on the floor. I asked what was wrong with me, but she didn't want to tell me. She said we needed to go outside right away. As we headed out of the front door, I heard my dad talking to a 911 operator and telling them that when we got home, he found our back sliding glass door shattered and objects strewn about the kitchen. We went to the neighbor's house and waited for the police to come. After a few minutes, my dad joined us. He seemed to be well shaken up, which was a new sight to me. The police arrived and searched the house extensively. It was a big scene with all our neighbors outside and flashing lights illuminating the entire street for hours, but they never found anybody in our house. Whoever had been there had come and gone. The thing that gets me is that nothing was stolen. Whoever it was didn't want any of our possessions. What they did was take our canned food out of the pantry and stack them into small pyramids on our kitchen counter. They also turned on the TV in the basement and moved a few random objects to different parts of the house. Very creepy. It was like an insane person had been in our home and did things for reasons that only made sense to him. As the police were finishing up and ready to leave, I heard one of them ask my mom a question. They talked quietly, and I'm sure they thought I didn't hear. I pretended not to be listening, but I heard everything. You see, we kept magnetized letters on our fridge. I think I had gotten them for a birthday present a few years before, and we used them to leave each other messages for fun sometimes. The cop was asking my mom if the message on there that night was done by any of us. It wasn't. I watched my mom turn pale when he told her what it said. It still makes my skin crawl to this very day. It said, "Always watching." The police didn't find any fingerprints. They said the intruder had to have been wearing gloves. For the next few days, my entire family was extremely uneasy. I was absolutely positive the intruder was still in the house somehow, and that there was a hidden place nobody knew about where he could hide and listen to us. I never shook the feeling that somebody was there. Within a few months, we decided to move. It was all just too scary for us to stay in that area. We moved to a house several miles away. We were never bothered again, but I do still think about it. Was it kids playing a prank? Was it some insane person that wanted to torment a random family? Or was it someone that truly had it out for us, and who really was always watching? Could it have been a neighbor or someone we knew? These questions still keep me up at night sometimes. This happened many years ago, but the hairs on my neck stand up sometimes when I'm alone at home, and I have to check the house to make sure no one is hiding. Case notes, creepy file number 26. So the fact that you all moved, exactly what I would have done. That message on the fridge is just creepy beyond words. It's one of those events where it's probably not supernatural at all, but yet, damn, that is just too spooky. Who would do that? It probably was someone that was mentally ill, but why the message? Did he think it was someone else's house? Maybe. And that it took a while for you to move means that it probably was someone just trying to terrify you, since he was never back, whoever it was. At any rate, I'm glad you and your family are okay, but that would be traumatic indeed. Case file number 660, written by Anonymous Big 22. Gold from the Ether. I'm 20, male. So to put into perspective, my girlfriend of 2 years, 19 female, lost her mother unexpectedly 6 months before she and I met. Her mother and her were very close. They were practically best friends. Now, it's New Year's Eve and we're headed to her best friend's house for a party. My girlfriend decides to wear one of the last things her mother gave to her before passing away, a pair of gold earrings. At some point throughout the night, she loses an earring, devastated. We all retrace our every step and we do manage to find the backing to it, but no earring. It's now 24 hours later. I'm laying in her bed by myself with no clothes on while she's in the shower. I'm reading a book when all of a sudden, the freaking earring gets dropped onto my bare chest out of nowhere. I look around, nobody else is in the room, nobody else is even in the house, just my girlfriend mindlessly showering in the room besides me. I do not have long hair, and I was not wearing a hat. Absolutely zero chance it would stick to me. Case file number 661, written by, "Oh no, I'm farting." This had no business being the correct answer. This happened about 3 years ago, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately because of just how weird and inexplicable it was. Quick background on Cash Cab. If you know what it is, you can skip this bit. Cash Cab was an unscripted game show in which unsuspecting New Yorkers would find themselves answering trivia questions in the back of a cab. Depending on how far they needed to go, the contestant would answer questions that got progressively harder as the ride went on. The name of the Cash Cab driver and host was Ben Bailey. My buddy came over during a weeknight while I was sitting on my couch watching old reruns of Cash Cab. He sat down to relax as we both tried to guess the answers to the trivia questions given throughout the show. A little while into one of the episodes, from what I can remember, I believe it was 2 or 3 men that got into the Cash Cab. These guys looked a little strung out and like they partied a bit. Me and my friend, having a fricked up sense of humor, proceeded to make jokes about how they were on their way to buy Oxycontin, prescription pain pills. The Oxycontin jokes proceeded for about a minute or two until a new question had come up. The host, Ben Bailey, asked a question regarding an old king of England. May have been a question about King Richard, but I can't remember. The men were given time to deliberate, during which time my buddy and I said something like, "Yeah, Ben, we're gonna go with our previous answer and say Oxycontin." Not even 5 seconds later, Ben Bailey exclaims, "Oxycontin is right!" My buddy was still laughing. It had gone right over his head, but I froze in my seat. I said, "Did you frickin' hear that?" And I proceeded to rewind. I played it back for him just to make sure I wasn't crazy, and sure enough, he repeated, "Oxycontin is right!" I still, to this day, have no explanation. It had absolutely nothing to do with the question asked, and there was no reason for him to say that at all. The episode is out there, and you can try to find it if you want to confirm. I have not been able to find the episode since, but I also haven't looked too hard. The jokes were regarding Oxycontin, not Percocets. If anyone could help find the episode or point me in the direction of full Cash Cab episodes, I would greatly appreciate it. Case file number 662, written by Oni DiMaggio, When Death and Glitches Fuse Together. This happened about 3 weeks ago. I had the day off work and my cousin Harold asked if I could drive him to pick up new tires for his truck. They were being sold in a town just over an hour away, and basically it was a 2-lane country highway straight shot all the way there. About halfway there, he points and says, "Hey, look at that house over there. It has vultures all over it. I've never seen that before." Sure enough, on the left side of the road was an old 2-story country farmhouse with 7 to 8 vultures sitting on the roof. There were another 3 or 4 circling the property overhead. Immediately, I blurted out that maybe they smell something dead inside and were just stared as we drove by. Anyway, we got his tires and it slipped from our mind. On the way back, we had the windows on the truck down when suddenly we got a good whiff of rotting flesh, and sure enough, we were passing by that house again, but we didn't stop and we went home. I couldn't stop thinking about it and I called Harold to tell him so. He said he couldn't even sleep as it was bugging him too. I proposed that the right thing to do was to go back to the house, get the address, and call it in to the police for a welfare check. What if someone else was dead inside? What if they had a family? He agreed and we immediately set off. Here's the problem though. We couldn't locate the house. We drove all the way to that town where we got the tires, then turned around and we couldn't find it on the way back either. It's the same road. It was like the house ceased to exist. There was no house, no vultures, and no smell of death that matched what we saw the previous day. We even went out and did the same thing the next day, with no luck. But now, the more I think about it, what we saw made no sense. Although it was a country highway, there still had to be thousands of cars and trucks on it every day, not to mention police patrols. Surely one of those would have noticed a creepy old farmhouse with a crap ton of vultures on it and put two and two together. I still can't explain it, and it still bothers me and my cousin.
Well, hi there. I figured I'd give my case notes outside. It's a beautiful day, and I've never been on video before, so we'll just test this out, see if you like it. This is a big old Ben who just doesn't want to give me time to record. Ben, I'm working here. Hey. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Ben. Yeah. I like you too. Now, give me a second, okay? So regarding case file 662, when you look at vultures, they have great sense of smell and they can know when someone has died. So that you saw vultures around the house and then the house disappeared, was that an omen in your own life? I don't know if anyone in your life has passed away. To me, it sounds more like a perception glitch than a house actually being there and then vanishing. Actually, curiously enough, there was another glitch where there was an entire mansion that vanished, but it was only one person that saw it. In this case, it's two people. So maybe something in the area itself was causing a hallucination as a group. Mass hallucinations do happen quite often in history, which is peculiar. But what could induce it? As you say, it's a highway or a freeway where thousands of people a day go by. So if it happened to you, it would happen to a whole bunch of people. Maybe a whole bunch of people actually did see a similar mansion with vultures around it. Maybe not everyone saw the same thing though. My gut says it's either a perception glitch or you were perceiving into another reality where there was a house there and someone had died in it. It just wasn't in this universe. You were just perceiving through it. The reason why is unclear. There's some environmental factor, I'm sure, but I also think it depends on the person's brain. Your brain has to be wired a certain way where you're perceiving it. I don't know if that's genetic or environment, but either way, I've never seen anything like it. All of my life has been pretty damn normal. But yeah, that's it. Let me know if you like these glitches where I'm on camera.
Creepy file number 27, written by OK Narwhal 465. The white van on my road. So this was about 3 years ago, and it still creeps me out. I was 18, female, at the time. I'm now 21. I was walking home from work at the local pizza joint, and took my usual route home. It was about 9:45 to 10:15 p.m., and it was super dark. As I'm getting about 100 yards away from the street I live on, a white van turns onto that street. Something didn't sit right with me, so I yanked out my earbuds and paused my music. I then turned down my street, and as I got closer to my house, I started getting a weird gut feeling. I looked up from my phone as I was about to text my roommate, who was out of town at the time, that I was almost home, about 15 yards or so. As I look up, I notice the white van sitting in front of my house, and the man inside is just staring at me, the yellow car light shining on his face. He had brown hair, glasses, and facial hair. His van lights were off, but his car was still running. I stopped and put my back to a tree in my neighbor's yard, and just stood there, maintaining eye contact with this man. After about what seemed like eternity, probably like 5 minutes minimum, he starts driving towards the stop sign at the end of the road. I didn't put my back to him. I kept my back to the tree and maintained a visual on the van the entire time, until it stopped at the stop sign. He just sat there for probably 2 to 3 minutes, all while I'm not looking away and while my back is still on the tree. Finally, he turned right, the direction in which I had come from, and after about 20 seconds of making sure he or anybody else wasn't coming, I bolt to my house. I quickly get inside and lock the door. I go to the window and very quietly look through the blinds. I didn't turn on any lights because I'm not stupid. After a few seconds of looking, he drove back up and down the street and left again. Afterwards, I texted my roommate what happened, and then went to each and every one of the windows in my house to make sure they were locked along with the back door and garage door, and made sure to keep all lights off for the remainder of the night. I didn't sleep a lick that night. I was so paranoid at every sound or movement. Let's just say, I never walked home after that. Case file number 663, written by Konosu, the Green Jacket. This occurrence happened about, I'd say, 6 to 7 months ago while I was heading home from a family vacation. We stopped at a rest area somewhere in Alabama to let our dogs out and to head to the bathroom ourselves, and I was left in charge of the dogs while everyone else went in. So when my turn came around, I walked/ran in pretty fast. This is when I first spotted the disappearing man. He was this older guy with a cane, and the only reason I noticed him was because of the bright green jacket he had on. Well, I walked past him while he was on a bench, and I turned around because the green had caught my eye, and he was gone. Sure, he could have gotten up fast. Maybe he was just a fast old dude I didn't know. So I headed in and used the bathroom. So when I finished in the bathroom, I'm walking out and see the same guy walking in front of me out of the doors. I look down at my phone, and when I look up, the guy is gone again. I sped up and looked out the doors left and right to see if I could spot him, but he was completely gone out of nowhere. One of the weirdest experiences I've had, really. It may not seem like much, but it was quite odd. Case file number 664, written by True Gamer 1995. Of Mercurial memory. This weekend, I recently moved back into my childhood town with my girlfriend. We are very happy about the move, and I called my dad to tell him we are fully moved in. We start to reminisce about the 15 years of memories we had in the town and the different apartments we lived in the town over the years. Both me and my dad have crazy good memories of even the smallest things. As we kept talking about the different places, an odd, creepy moment happened. There was one apartment we only lived in for a year, and at first, he couldn't remember the apartment at all. As we kept talking about it, we figured out the creepy part. My dad remembers everything around the apartment and events that happened outside of it, but for some reason, we couldn't remember one thing in the apartment. Not any furniture or events in it at all. We literally remember the ugly dark green front door, complaining while carrying groceries up the 3 flights of stairs that had green rails that matched the door, and a bunch of other things, but nothing inside the apartment. It's almost like we stop existing once you enter the apartment. We actually remember the tour of the apartment and the brown bearded guy who showed us the place, and we remember shaking his hand and sealing the deal, but never what it looked like inside or anything happening in there. Has this happened to anyone else? How does this happen? Case file number 665, written by Juan Cloaked Stone. Hi, Jennifer. People, mostly people I barely know, but I have told my name to before, like patients at my job for example, always call me by the same wrong first name. Every single time someone gets my name wrong accidentally, like we're all called someone by the wrong name by accident, the name they call me is always Jennifer. Now I think everyone's first instinct here would be that it's just confirmation bias, and that I only just pay attention to it when the name they call me is Jennifer, and that I disregard the times they've called me by another name that isn't Jennifer. But I took this into account about 8 to 10 years ago, and started to pay strict attention. I have never been called the wrong name that isn't Jennifer in this entire time frame. 10 years. To get some logical reasoning out of the way, my real name does not sound like Jennifer. Nor does it start with a J or any other letter that can make the J sound in English or any other language that I'm aware of. This has happened in multiple different states, so that rules out that maybe there's just a girl who lives locally to me that's named Jennifer and we just happen to look really alike. Strangers that I don't know at all come up to me on the street mistaking me for a different person. It's always people who I've told my real name to at some point. Hell, even people who have known me for a short while but long enough to know better. I'm talking over the course of several months, have called me Jennifer. The freaking priest that married my ex and I, who we have known for a year and a half at that point, called me Jennifer when we got up to rehearsing the vow portion of the wedding ceremony on our rehearsal night, even though our names were written down in front of him. I freaked out that he might do the same thing during the actual ceremony the next day, but he didn't, thankfully. He called my ex by his correct name. I do not believe that I look like any celebrity that I know of named Jennifer, and I have never been told that I look like a celebrity named Jennifer. I have been told I look like other celebrities, but never Jennifer. I don't hang out with or work with anyone named Jennifer. Nobody I'm related to is named Jennifer. I have been called Jennifer by people of different genders, different races, different nationalities, different first languages spoken, and from different countries. My real name is a common one, so it's not hard to remember. The only thing I'm left to deduce is that it's just a huge coincidence that spanned at least a decade. So what do you make of this? Why does everyone mistake me for Jennifer?
So, case notes for file 665. This is a weird one. It's not often that there's really no clear solutions, nothing that's obvious. To be named Jennifer by everyone in your life for 10 years. You went through all the obvious solutions, where it's not some local thing, where people of a certain nationality or region or dialect or language just mistake you for Jennifer for some reason. The only thing I can think of that makes any sense is that you just have one of those faces where you just look like a Jennifer. For instance, people say that I look like a James, maybe more formally Charles. My name is actually Paul, which does work as well. It's not my favorite name, although it's not terrible either. I think it's reasonable. And yeah, people have sometimes called me James when they didn't know my name, but never after the fact. So yours seems to be an extreme degree. Somehow people are just assuming maybe your aura is giving off this extreme vibe, conveying this absolute certainty in people that your name is Jennifer when it's not. But tell me, if it wasn't a hassle to change your name, what would you want to be called? And what's your first name if you want to share that information? I think I'll leave you all on a very inspiring quote that I read recently by the late and great Robin Williams. No matter what people tell you, words and ideas can absolutely change the world. I think it's part of what I'm trying to do, just spread ideas and stories about the world that seems so mundane, but it actually is fantastic, and we don't know everything about it yet. And that's part of the fun, to learn and explore and understand. Much more of that to do.
Bonus file, written by I am a sweet little angel, a sanctuary of doom. I was a jungle perch, JP, fishing at the Black Rocks waterfall in Mowbray, far north Queensland. To get to the waterfalls, you have to walk up the creek that eventually leads to the waterfalls. The walk is about 3 kilometers long. There is no set path you take, so you find yourself walking up on both creek sides or in the actual creek itself. Plenty of rock hopping and wading through the water that was chest deep. Going up was immaculate. Caught lots of fish, recharged myself from the stress of life. It was raining and there was no one else for the whole day in the area, apart from one family that passed me because I took my time fishing each deeper pool for JP. The family had already made their way to the top, then left when I was still making my way up. So I was truly alone then. Once I had gotten to the main waterfall, I had a bit of a rest and relax there. All was well until I started getting an unnerving feeling that something or someone was watching me. I mostly brushed this off because you do tend to get these types of feelings being alone in the bush. After my rest, I started making my way down the creek. However, the feeling did not leave. It wasn't overwhelmingly strong, so I kept on brushing it off. I decided that I would only fish the main pools that I had some luck in on the way up. Also, you don't catch as many JP downstream due to them mostly looking upstream for prey. After walking about 300 meters from the main waterfall, I wasn't getting much luck, so I sat down on a flat spot and changed the lure on my rod. This is when it started to get very strange. As soon as I stood up, I had this unearthly smell fill my nostrils. It's something you can't describe. Personally, it felt more like an experience rather than a direct smell from something, if that makes sense. If I was going to compare it to a smell, it would be similar to really bad smelling sweat mixed with rotting fresh fruit and wet car carpet or dog. After half a second of smelling this, I instantly went into this very confused trance. I didn't know where I was, briefly, and felt very confused and lightheaded. I would say this lasted for about 4 to 5 seconds, but it could have been longer as I didn't really have a sense of time during it. I remembered snapping out of the trance I was in whilst looking at my rod. The instant I snapped out of it, I felt all the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Some people say this is a play on words or expression, but this feeling was different. My upper back and neck went extremely tingly, and I could literally feel my neck hairs stand up. This was paired with the most intense, get the hell out of there feeling I have ever experienced. It wasn't just an instinctive, horrible feeling. It was pure doom, like all the fear in the world was projected into me in one single shot. I knew instantly that whatever did that did not want me there, and I knew that in my whole entire being. I was so convinced something was there that I verbally apologized for being there and said I was leaving. The trouble was, it was 2.7 kilometers back to my car, and moving downstream is a lot harder than upstream, so it was a very long, painful, and paranoid walk back. The whole way, it felt like someone or something was following and watching me. I thought I heard a scream or screech on 2 occasions, but it was so hard to tell with the loud gushing water. With each step I moved away from the initial spot that the experience happened in, that feeling would subside a bit. I was about 3/4 of the way back to the car, and I gained enough courage and curiosity to see if I could maybe communicate with whatever it was, or at least catch a glimpse of what was there. I stopped, turned around, and was about to walk back upstream, literally about to take my first step, when the feeling of intense doom punched me in the face again, but with only about 1/4 of the strength from the first time. It was like it was warning me again not to come back. With that, I accepted my fate and made my way back to the car, still shaken from what had just happened. As I was walking on the off-road back to the car, the owner of the nearby property was near the entrance and was about to mow his lawn. I stopped for a chat and asked him if he had had any weird experiences around the area. He looked at me with a cheeky smile and blatantly said, I wasn't the only one that has had an experience like that here. He said that around 5 times a year, he will be stopped by a shaken tourist or a local that has just soiled their jocks. He said around the same time last year, a couple had a very similar experience to mine. He seems to think it's around the wet season when there aren't many people on the track. He mentioned that night that he had heard what he thought were pigs screaming around his yard. Said it didn't sound like a pig, but that's what he logically thought it was. Then, as he went to check for any crop or ground destruction from them in the morning, there was nothing. He also had moments when the curlews would be going off their nutters screaming, then all the birds would fly away from the trees, then just eerie silence. He also mentioned there have been many yowie, Australian Bigfoot, sightings around that area. I later found out from an Aboriginal elder living in the Mowbray area that was sacred land to the Aboriginal people, and men were not meant to go there as it was a birthing place for women. After my experience, I had to sit in my car and collect my thoughts on what just happened, away from the area, of course, thinking about going back with a mate in the near future. Case file number 666, written by Matt Cat, speaking money into existence. This is a bundled triple story from our very own listener, Matt Cat, The Kinetic Kitchen. I'm in my kitchen eating dinner, listening to Kinetic Symphony on YouTube, who covers Glitch in the Matrix stories. At one point, as I'm munching down on some zucchini slices, I get the most intense feeling of déjà vu ever. I'm physically getting goosebumps now as I type this out. Background context. I had just been telling people all day about quantum immortality, which I quite literally learned from listening to Kinetic Symphony. And now I think I'm a time hopper and I had died from a severe eating disorder, either early 2022 or late 2021. So as I feel this déjà vu, I think, wow, déjà vu as I listen to Glitch in the Matrix stories, and I've been telling the homies about quantum immortality all day, and laughed it off as nothing. Not even 5 seconds later, I hear Kinetic Symphony say, a man's voice in the same kitchen, but in a different universe. So me, 25-year-old man, experiencing déjà vu in my kitchen, but in a different universe? Oh my goodness, I was beyond spooked, and even commented on my experience on the video, to which Kinetic Symphony replied, symmetry in thought. It sends a chill down your spine, doesn't it? In a good way, as I felt goosebumps down my spine. Okay, now I'm even more spooked. The famous, debatable, Kinetic Symphony replies to me on my first comment ever about the déjà vu and then speaks the chill down my spine into existence. Not sure what went on here, but I would love to hear your thoughts. Ear biscuits, folded chips. I was orthorexic by choice, which means to focus solely on a diet pertaining to healthy foods, clean eating, and I live a very active and physical lifestyle. I'm a skateboarder, get roughly 10,000 steps a day, and I strength train to build muscle. I started a clean bulk, which is to increase my calorie intake in order to put on weight, which in turn puts on muscle as long as I get sufficient protein and healthy fats. So I started eating some fun foods for the first time in around 5 years. I had just opened a bag of kettle chips, Parmesan garlic potato chips, as I wanted a nice crunch with my meal. I love the folded chips. They're extra crunchy and for some reason always packed with the most flavor and seasoning. For the first time eating chips in many years, opting for the folded ones, I'm watching an episode of Rhett and Link's podcast, Ear Biscuits, on YouTube. As I'm eating the folded chips, they literally start talking about folded potato chips and how they're the best ones. Link talks about how the folded chips are the best for a good minute as I'm chomping on the folded potato chips myself. This cannot be summed up by mere coincidence, as this happened after so many glitches, coincidences, and déjà vu moments. This world is a simulation, and I really think that whatever I do for some reason, it resonates in other forms. Movies I see for the first time, podcasts or videos I'm listening to for the first time, etc. Speaking money into existence. This is pure manifestation at its finest, and can only be explained as such. Okay, so following all these crazy coincidences and manifesting thoughts into reality, I decided to do an experiment to see if it was truly a simulation and matrix situation. I said out loud, I am going to find a large sum of money, randomly on the ground. Not 2 days later, I was planning on just having a rest day and staying home all day. However, I needed to go to the store for some items I needed. I parked my car and thought, I guess I'll go up these stairs, which is odd because I haven't walked up these stairs in a good 8 months. When I get to the top of the stairs, I find a wad of cash. I picked it up and put it in my pocket without counting it. On the drive home, I laughed and spoke out loud. Watch, there'll just be a $100 bill nestled in the middle, and laughed about it. I had only seen $1 bills on the outside of the wad. I get home, and sitting in the middle is a $100 bill, followed by 4 20s, 10 ones, and a $5 bill. I literally and physically manifested $195 straight cash into my reality. This is definitely a simulation, and I have the ability to manifest anything I want. Is it a blessing, a curse, or just symmetry in thought? Definitely sends a chill down my spine, but in a good way.
Case notes for file 666. So I do remember replying to your comment, but I didn't really know how intense this was for you. It was just a comment I was reading that didn't have as much context, obviously, as an entire story like this. Regarding the first story where you were listening to me in your kitchen, the Kinetic Kitchen, I'm not sure how you would have died. It's not impossible. Obviously, we're really fragile as human beings. We can die so easily. We can have random strokes, and even if you're perfectly healthy, you could just have a blood clot in your head and 1 second you're fine, no symptoms, perfectly healthy, go to the doctor, clean bill of health, next second, just dead. It's not fair, and it doesn't happen that often, but it can happen. And maybe, well, you said you were eating zucchini slices, so maybe you were eating a zucchini slice and you choked on it and died. Just like that. Of course, if quantum immortality is real, this all balances out. Our fragility is fine because we can die, but we just transpose ourselves to another us in a different universe of which there's nearly infinite. So it's fine. No worries. It is very sad for the people there that don't realize that quantum immortality is a thing. They just think you died and that's it, the end of your story. Or maybe you went to heaven or something like that. But yeah, at least you live on, if that is what happened. I don't know, it might just be a coincidence. And the same thing for you listening to Rhett and Link's podcast and eating kettle chips and they're talking about it. You know, coincidences do happen.
So I don't know if you're manifesting, maybe subconsciously willing yourself to be exposed to these coincidences. And there is something to say there, because some people experience more coincidences than others. Are they merely perceiving them more often, or are they actually manifesting their will, subconsciously or consciously, into the universe, so that their minds are guided along a pathway of sorts? Sort of like a guided experience in a game versus unguided. You can ask the universe for not visual hints, but sort of a inclination on where to go and how to do things if you want to wind up to a certain position. And that's exactly what I think happened with the third glitch, where you manifested money into the universe. I'm not sure you actually physically created money. I don't think that's possible. The amount of energy required to create mass from energy is mind-boggling. So what probably happened is someone in the universe went to that place and they dropped money, and the universe is aware of this information. If we want to attribute it to being a simulation, well, it's just data. Data stored on a server partition in the real world. So then you're in the real world, and a developer sees this request by you to manifest money. Well, they can't create it. That would violate the laws they're given by the game, but they can lead you towards it. So maybe there's instincts in you, influences, that led you to make decisions where you wound up exactly where you needed to be to pick up that money. And to you, it just feels like, oh wow, I created this money from nothing. But instead, you were just guided along a path that led you to it. When I tried to bike from Florida to North Carolina, I only made it one day, and I was trying desperately to find somewhere to sleep. And I was just saying, it was all in the back of my mind, but it was part of my thoughts, you know. I guess some of it was bleeding into my consciousness. And eventually I just wound up, okay, I'm never going to find a place, and everything here is owned, it's private property, I'm never going to find a place to sleep. And then eventually, just as I was thinking this, there was a path up ahead that curved, I followed it, and voila, there was an empty spot, no one around, wasn't private property, no markings, so I just managed to find a place to sleep, which was nice, because I was tired. So yeah, I think we can manifest our will into the universe, and what really that just means is asking the universe for guidance. Sort of like going into story mode for a game. I like that idea, but I think there's a lot of truth to it. Those are my thoughts, and thank you for sharing the stories with us.
Case file number 667, written by Yeo Manticore, Crossing the Threshold of Time. I actually don't know where to post this. I am browsing the internet with random Google searches like Superman is too slow for Goku, or something like Superman is not a skilled martial artist, or any debate about how weak and inconsistent Superman's abilities, feats, and skills are, because I find him way too boring to begin with. Around 7:53 AM, GMT plus 8, I do these random searches before I play Gwent Mobile at 8 sharp. Last time I checked, the time was around 7:58 AM. I finished a random Quora post about the aforementioned topic, and when I checked the time again, it was 7:43 AM. I had a miniature heart attack. I ran downstairs to check the living room clock. It's also 7:43 AM. I asked my sister the time on her phone. It's 7:44 AM. Okay, I'm just freaking out now. The laws of reality have been disrupted. I don't trust clocks now. I have never set the time on my phone since it's using auto-default international time, Manila time. I'm not sure what happened. I'm not high nor drunk. I've never been high or drunk for 5 years ever since college, and I'm pretty sure that the time I started browsing was 7:53 AM. I'm pretty tight on time due to my work schedule. I just finished my night shift at 6:30 AM and arrived at home at 7 AM. Exposure to science fiction ideas is scaring me that I have crossed some sort of threshold and the timeline has been disrupted. If it is, hopefully for the better, like an end to the war or climate change or something. I hope so. Bonus file, written by Majestic Anybody, 2025. The Visitor in All Black. I, 23 female, have been a geriatric nurse for 2.5 years now, and I experience a lot of death and dying. One thing I have surprisingly never experienced is paranormal activity or spirits. My father has worked with the Paranormal Research Society and has been on numerous paranormal research projects over the years. I've heard crazy amounts of stories throughout my lifetime, but I'm a see it to believe it kind of gal. I have always been a skeptic when my father talked about actually seeing spirits and apparitions. With that being said, I have never seen anything that I could call concrete evidence of something paranormal, but today forever changed my life and my reality. Today I was standing in front of a medication administration cart, preparing my medications, when one of my nurse's aides came to report that one of my patients, who was actively dying, had a family member in the room on the floor. My first thought was, they do not have enough chairs in the room. I will complete my current task and then go address this. I took the medications I had prepared for the appropriate patient. The appropriate patient's room just happened to be directly across the hall from said patient's room, with the family member on the floor. As I'm walking by, I glance in the actively dying patient's room to observe this family member on the floor. I see, from the knee down, 2 legs dressed in black slacks and all black leather shoes, lying flat on the floor, face down. These legs seemed to be lying parallel to the bed where my dying patient was lying and were sticking out from the end of the bed frame. I glimpsed over, noticed this, and went into the room across the hall to give the medications to the appropriate patient, as I did not want them to be misplaced. I was in the room for an estimated 30 to 45 seconds before exiting and walking across the hall. When I entered the room again of the actively dying patient, the legs were gone. No one was on the floor. The patient's family member was sitting in a chair at the bedside, with clothes on that do not resemble the ones seen on the legs I had seen before. I immediately asked this family member if they had been on the floor. The family member stated, "No, no one has been in here except me. I did a room search and did not see anyone else in the room either." The other visiting family members were outside during this and also did not have clothes that resembled the ones I had just seen on the legs of whatever entity was in here. I spent all afternoon trying to find someone with black pants and black leather shoes. No one turned up, and I still cannot find a way to justify what I saw. Keep in mind, the nurse's aide saw exactly what I saw too and described the same feet, in the same position. Also, the family member that was in the room did not observe what my nurse's aide and I observed. Has anyone on here had a similar experience?